Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening everyone. Welcome back to our YouTube channel and to another installment in the Copper and Wood Chute Mountain Railroad. If you were watching last time, you will have seen me lower the sub-road bed for the standard gauge just slightly, just enough to ensure that the car heights match between the standard and narrow gauge, so that the transshipment platform will work. With that project now taken care of, it is time to start the most creative part of the build, namely the scenery. So in this week's instalment, I'm going to get most of the landforms roughed in. There's no hard and fast science to it. Mostly it's a case of making it up as I go along, just having a basic idea of what the customer wants. So without further ado, let's just head out to the workshop and have some fun.
Well, I went to Lowe's earlier today to buy scenery materials. I got back about an hour ago. Unfortunately, I forgot to bring the camera out here. I had to go back in and get it. I started doing scenery in this area, or preparing for it. I cut out a lot more of the sub-road bed. If you recall from the previous videos, there was a lot more in there. I wanted to cut it back fairly close to the track so I could put a bit of a fill in. And I want the landscape to drop down well below track level in this area. I started off by mounting strips of plywood as ledges below the top of the frame, because I want the first piece surface mounted. That way I can cut down slightly into the frame if I want to get more height to the scenery. Sorry I didn't photograph it earlier. Hopefully my description is sufficient to know what I've been doing. I've already cut the next two planks of foam, and they're going to go in on top of the frame across this area. Let me just get those installed quickly. I'm using a product called Liquid Nails. Make sure you get the foam safe one, because there are several that are not. But let me just install the next two pieces. I think one of them is going to have to be weighted down because these wires might try to push it up. I think that is enough foam blocks stacked in that area. I'm going to have just a little bit of a rock cut through here, fairly high but not very wide, and then it's going to drop down below track level in the front. At the moment it's probably way higher than it needs to be, but I like to use a 2-inch thick foam because it's a lot less gluing, it's far fewer layers. And I always deliberately build the landforms bigger than I expect to need them. That way I've got a lot of tolerance when it comes to trimming them, which is something that I won't do until at least tomorrow. That is exactly 1/4 of the foam used up. I bought one 4x8 sheet of 2-inch foam, started by cutting a 12-inch wide strip off the side, and I've used that entire first strip with nothing left over. But I'm already on the last tube of Liquid Nails. I don't know why I only bought 3 tubes. I probably should have bought 10. Well, it's Saturday morning, and I've heard back from the customer. I sent him some photographs and a question sheet yesterday. I wanted to make sure the sawmill was where he wanted it, and it is. He said it's exactly right. I didn't have a footprint for the mine. Originally, he sent a footprint this way around, but we spoke on the phone, and he said yes, he can build it the other way. So we'll put it like that. This is the ore bin, and that's the hoist house. This way, he's able to spot 3 cars at the mine instead of just 1. So it makes a whole lot more sense to build it that way. It also means it could be further from the sawmill, because this is the narrow end. So that's an improvement for both reasons. I'm going to start carving the foam blocks that I stacked yesterday, and then I will probably also do a little bit more stacking today. I may as well finish the last tube of adhesive, and then I will get some more on Monday. I've drawn around the sawmill. I'm going to put that back in the box now so I don't damage it, although this cardboard template for the mine can stay where it is. Maybe I should also make another cardboard template for the sawmill. Well, that only took a couple of minutes. I now have a cardboard template for the sawmill. There's also a sawdust burner, which is about the size of the glue bottle, and that will also go in about that same location. The sawmill has now been safely put away, so it's not going to get damaged. I can now start making a mess. I started by cutting down the fascia with the jigsaw. You may see some remains of pencil marks along the edge. That's because I mark it approximately where I think it needs to be, and I follow the line roughly. I err on the side of being too high because it's a lot easier to cut it down again later than it is to add some back in. Anyway, as soon as I'd finished cutting the fascia, I started with the oscillating saw, shaping the foam blocks behind it. And I'm now reasonably happy with the shape of the landscape in front of the track. I haven't started doing anything behind it yet. These foam blocks stacked up at the back are way too close for narrow gauge, so I'm going to have to cut quite a bit off them. I got carried away when putting them on. I could have done it with a lot less foam. Well, I've now cut back these 3 blocks of foam to the point where they are plenty far enough away from the track not to cause clearance issues. And I use the pieces I cut out to extend the bank. This last little bit will get filled in with sculpture mold. I'm not going to bother with foam there. I've also carved the cut on most of it. That's just my first rough cut. My plan is to have this outcrop on the right be a fairly meaty rock spur that the railroad had to cut through, and the smaller one on the left is going to be a natural rock outcrop just behind the track that the railroad was able to avoid, and then a little bit of dirt bank in front of it. So I'm going to have another go at shaping this area, and then I'm going to cut down this bank. I'm not quite sure exactly how I want to do it just yet. I think I want to have it undulate quite a bit. A few areas of dirt bank and a few minor visible rocks as well. I want to make it fairly random to add as much interest as possible. I don't want just a plain 5-foot long dirt bank. The other thing I want to get done today is to add more of the cliff behind the mine. Let's put this back where it goes. There's just about room for a narrow plank of foam on edge, which I'll cover with rocks. Probably behind the mine and the sawmill. Although it's not going to be continuous, I will break it up a little bit. And then where the jigsaw is in the corner and all the way around, it's just going to be fairly gently undulating dirt. Well, this is what it looks like after another carving session in this area. I like it better now. I've also roughly shaped the bank between the 2 levels of track, and I've got all the blocks glued on around this area. That's as far as I can go because I am out of glue. I'm not going to try carving that today because it'll just move all over the place. I've got to let the glue set up a bit, and that takes quite a while with the foam because it's such a good insulator. I'm just going to go in now and I will come back out again on Monday. Well, it is Monday afternoon. Actually, it's quite late Monday afternoon. I went shopping this morning, had a load of errands to do, a load of small jobs to take care of. And I just got back out here this afternoon. All the foam blocks I stacked up on Saturday are rock hard now. The glue has completely set. I know the stuff that I did on Friday, Saturday morning when I was carving it, it wasn't quite hard and the blocks were sliding around a bit. So it'll be a lot easier to carve this afternoon. I also have another 7 tubes of adhesive, so I should have enough to finish now. Well, I have now carved all the blocks that I installed over the weekend. I've also laid in a lot more rough foam planks all the way to the benchwork joint on this side and around to the end of this section and part way across the drop flap. I can't really go any further here until I have built the bridge abutments and got those installed. So that's as far as I'll go for now. I was also thinking about this area, and I'm going to propose to the customer that we put a small stream in with some culverts approximately where the blue tape is. The other thing I've done is strategically position the glue bottle in the background and some piles of logs because the client was a bit concerned that there was going to be enough level ground for log piles and the sawdust burner. So that's why those pieces are there. It's Time to go in and feed Zeus now, send some photographs off to the customer and get some feedback. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Well, I spoke to the client last night. We discussed this corner. He likes the arrangement of the log piles. He likes the idea of a small stream with culverts. We decided that it didn't work around the end of the building and that it would have to be in a pipe underneath the structure. He did point out that I haven't allowed enough room for stacked lumber, so I'm going to cut down this last rock outcrop at the end of it to make more room in that area. I'm going to have to cut away some of this plywood to make room for the stream or drainage ditch, or whatever you want to call it. There's not going to be a whole lot of water in there. It'll just be a mostly dry creek bed that only gets water in when it rains. Well, I think that is all the cutting done. Had to use 3 saws to do it. Next thing I've got to do is glue some foam blocks underneath the plywood where I've cut the holes. Need a special situation here because the culvert under the mine spur, I think I can arrange it so that it's possible to see all the way through it. The others will just be blind. Well, that is all the foam blocks stuck up underneath the plywood. Everything is glued with the power grab, and I've put some 2.5-inch screws in from the bottom to hold it up against the plywood. With the stream meandering through there, I'm going to have to rethink some of the contours. This rock cut is going to have to move down a bit, so I'm going to need to cut out this bit and put another block of foam in there. Also, I want to move the sawmill a couple of inches down, so I need to move that hump, fill in that gap. So I'm going to cut that away as well, put in a new block of foam in there. Well, I've just had another carving session, followed by another cleanup. I've also put the sawmill and mine templates back, re-established the pile of logs, and also put some scrap plywood blocks to represent the stack of ready lumber. Everything is carved all the way to the end, and I have cut the fascia across the end as well. I'm going to send the customer an update photograph just to make sure he likes it before I continue.
Well, that's all for this week's instalment. Hope you enjoyed the show, found it useful or interesting or both. And I hope to see you back next week, where I will continue where I left off and get more in depth into the scenery building process. Promises to be a lot of fun. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and bye for now.